recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And look, this is one of those subjects I find fascinating. I wish we did it more academically. I mean, at some point, the math is going to win. The math always wins. This is the only thing I'm going to say that's close to being partisan, because you know I love you. But I sat there puckered up when the president was doing a State of the Union. I thought he was going to say, we need to come together and work on this. And we sort of made it even harder to work on because we sort of turned the discussion about the shortfalls in Social Security and Medicare into a campaign issue. And we, and the folks that are seeing the real math, we need to drag our brothers and sisters back to being willing to have the morality of this discussion. Mr. Schweikert, or Dr. Schweikert, one of the things, and I'm going to start with this and work backwards. We were doing a back of the napkin calculation months ago, and we hit exhaustion. The 23% cut is what the actuaries have given us. The next check out the door, we were calculating that senior poverty basically doubles in America. Is that a rational calculation?
No, and that's the challenge of the system within the budget window, that doing nothing means the negative effects. And we have a 25% shortfall, they have 23, it's very similar. The negative effects are the same. And as I said in my oral statement, the impacts are the most salient on low-income families.
Mr. Gross, go ahead and comment on that, because I had warned him I was going to ask this question. So please, am I within the ballpark?
I think you're likely in the ballpark. The one thing to keep in mind, though, is that we have never in the history of Social Security reached a point for reserve.
I'm not asking the theoretical. I'm just saying if the math hit this state, because I'm trying to make the moral argument why we all have to do something.
But there is this issue. We do not have experience with what would happen if we hit reserve depletion, what would happen to benefits. One theory is that the commissioner would be required to reduce benefits across the board for all recipients by 23%. That's not necessarily the case. Benefits could be delayed a month, or they could be trimmed to only be reduced for the highest
That's interesting, because
there are options. There's nothing in the law that indicates the way in which benefit expenditures.
Yeah, but there's nothing in the law, I think, it gives the commissioner that type of flexibility, is there?
Pardon?
We'll come back to. Mr. Houston.
The law is not specific on how benefit expenditures would be reduced. It's just okay. We'd have to pay only 77%.
Yeah, you can only pay what you have.
One way or the other.
Mr. Houston, it's one of the things that we keep talking about long-run actuarial accuracy, but if we go back 50 years, huge variance. Now, I don't know how much of that is fertility, income growth, population changes. What do you think were the triggers that why the earlier actuaries, we were so far off?
Just to clarify, are you talking about coming out of the 77 amendment?
Out of the 77, and I know that's a long time ago.
Sure. So right after the 77 amendments, and I think it's important to note that they never eliminated all of the long-range actuarial balance, but they did think it accomplished about eliminating or getting everything solvent for about 50 years. Part of the reason the midterm, that 25 to 50-year mark, was in good condition is we knew that there was going to be the baby boomers entering the workforce. That would be met with higher payroll tax revenues, and the system would be good. What happened right after 77 is the near-term income and cost rates were very close, and it turns out that the economic experience of the late 70s was not nearly as robust as we had hoped for after the legislation.
Okay.
There were two COLAs back-to-back in the late 70s that were approximately 10% or more, and there was decreasing wage growth as well. So this led to a combination of higher than expected costs.
I've seen a paper that talked about the effects of those COLAs at that time in that inflationary cycle and how much they just made an impact. And forgive me, it's the tyranny of the clock. Dr. Schweikert, okay, so CBO says 25% reduction in functionally 9 years. What do you think is the biggest driver of the difference between you and the actuaries over here? Is it fertility? Is it income growth? What drives that variance? And I know we're being nitpicky, but I'm trying to get my head around when I give speeches saying, is it 9 months? Is it 10 years?
Yeah.
Or, excuse me, 9 years, 10 years.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a number of things, and there's near term and long term. Whereas the long term, the demographics and the interest rate are key.
Yeah, but the
near term,
window to
it's a bit on fertility. It's really near term economic growth that I think we have different inflation and different growth, and that that drives the differences.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for your patience. One of the back of the napkins maths, and I think we used a different discount rate, but we did a 75-year actuarial shortfall, and it was like $202 trillion at the end of the 75 years of a shortfall without changes in the system. And it was, maybe I used too aggressive of a discount rate, but it gives you an idea of the scale. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.